We've talked about sleepers, risky picks, early fades, and late round targets, so I thought that now would be the perfect time to do a rankings update. I've got my top 24 at every position, and you can find my full rankings at Fantasy Pros. We're going to go through my rankings, highlight some players that need a little deeper explanation, and we will talk strategy. We've got a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and dive right in. We'll start off here at running back. The top four are very standard. This is what you're going to typically see across the board with all rankers, but there is one person that I do want to call out here, and it is going to ruffle some feathers. It's Christian McCaffrey. Sadly, while he is factually a top four ranked running back for me, because that is exactly what his upside is if he stays on the field, I will not be taking a lot of him. Absolutely not this season, because my risk tolerance level is not extremely high, especially in a typical redraft league. And the facts are that Christian McCaffrey is an extreme liability this season. His patterns are very clear. In years where he has finished as the overall RB1, he has not made it through a quarter of the season. Now, I might have been willing to take that risk with him, right? Because the upside is just so stupid. Sometimes you just have to do it. If the touches were not so egregious last season, because we have seen Christian McCaffrey have strong seasons and then follow it up with an excellent season, right? That's not a concern. But the number of touches that he had last year, very ridiculous. Over 400 total touches, the highest of his entire career, and the first time that he has ever had over 300 carries. At his age, that's not a good combination, unfortunately. Now, the 49ers did it because they had no other choice. The entire team was hurt. They had to rely on Christian McCaffrey, but that ideally is not the way that they want to use that running back, right? Especially at that age. And unfortunately, the facts are that after a massive level of touches, you're an extremely big risk for regression and injury risk in the following year. So, hey, if he makes it through a full season, 100%, he will be a top three back, right? Because, he's Christian McCaffrey. But I don't trust him to make it through a full season, unfortunately. After the top four is where my rankings get a little bit different than consensus. I love De'Von Achane's potential for heavy receptions this season. I am higher on him than consensus. Not a ton, right? He is still ranked as an RB1 by the vast majority of fantasy rankers, but I do have him a little bit higher ranked than the majority there. And judging from all of the comments that I've gotten anytime I post about Achane on social media, a lot of people think that I am a lunatic for believing that Achane has true overall RB1 potential this season and can have a Christian McCaffrey type of season. That is a hot take. It is a bold take. If you're looking for a bold take, that is my one for this season. But hear me out here. I hear your concerns. The main concern is that Miami will be trash. I won't argue with you there, right? But Miami has been trash. I'm confused. Were we under the impression that this offense was prolific last year? In 2025, Miami was 25th in offensive points, 26th in total yards, 24th in total rush attempts, yet 13th in rushing yards, with Achane providing over 1,300 rushing yards on a 5.67 yards per carry with a very mediocre offensive line last season. Over the past two seasons, Achane has racked up over 3,300 yards and 24 total touchdowns. The second concern that everyone has is that Malik Willis is a running quarterback that won't check down. Now, I will give you one thing, right? We have zero evidence that Malik Willis will check down. Our sample size is very small on him. Like, we don't have a ton of full games, right? They can literally be counted on one hand. The ones in Tennessee, they don't really count because no one was checking down to Derrick Henry. And Green Bay is not really a high check down offense anyway. But just because he hasn't checked down doesn't mean that he can. But again, why is our concern actually checkdowns? The misconception here is that Achane needs to rely on checkdowns. He doesn't. He lines up as a receiver. Let's compare this to Green Bay since he was just there, right? Josh Jacobs lined up in the slot a total of 8 times last season, according to PFF. Achane, on the other hand, lined up in the slot 106 times, with 42 on the outside. So we can level set here, right? Let's compare it to Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey lined up in the slot 93 times last season with 21 on the outside. Bijan Robinson, that's a good comp. Bijan Robinson lined up in the slot 98 times last season and 59 out wide. If you are truly a dynamic pass catcher, your offense is not going to rely on the whim of a quarterback checking down, right? They're going to use you as a true receiving option. And here's the best news, right? We don't have to wonder what Miami will do because all they did was promote from within for the offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. The offense has no wide receiver one, no wide receiver two, no wide receiver three. No offense to those guys, but let's be honest here. Achane is by far the best receiving option they have on that team. He will be utilized as a receiver as he has been in previous years. So don't panic, don't overthink it. Don't worry about the checkdowns. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for him being actual utilized as a receiver, and that's how he will be lining up. A subpar team with a bad schedule will be playing from behind. Yeah, they're going to have to throw. They can try to keep it close, but they are going to have to throw. And Achane's main talent, right, is his receiving upside and how electric he is in terms of breakaway runs and yards after the catch. Don't overthink it here. You also notice that I am a little higher on Saquon. Now, consensus has been coming around. I've been higher, to be fair to myself. I've been higher on Saquon from the jump. And consensus does seem to be working its way back towards me, but I'm still a little bit higher there. I do believe we are in for a bounce back season. The Eagles, when they won the Super Bowl, they won it on the back of Saquon. Their best course of action to get back on track is to go back to Saquon, right? Especially since, they're seeking a new identity with their receiving core. They need to lean on Saquon, who will have fresher legs coming off a lower workload in 2026, the exact opposite of Christian McCaffrey. And as a note, in case you noticed, I am ranking Josh Jacobs in redraft as if he will be starting this season. Now, wide receivers. We're going to have to take a very nuanced approach with drafting wide receivers here. There is a very clear safe tier one. Puka Nacua, Jamar Chase, Jaxson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those are the guys that we know year after year we can just straight up rely on. Obviously, injury, barring that issue, right? But for the most part, these are our most reliable guys for sure. After that, things get a little bit messy. Actually, they get very messy. CeeDee Lamb gets the default number 5 ranking because he's the only guy within the next several picks that doesn't have a quarterback issue. But I don't really feel comfortable drafting CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver 5 with George Pickens there. Then you have Justin Jefferson, who obviously has potential for a boost back to what he was before with Kyler Murray, but there's always J.J. McCarthy lurking in the shadows. Nico Collins has a C.J. Stroud issue. Drake London has a combination of Michael Penix to a Tagovailoa combo issue there. And then you get to George Pickens right after that, who is safe again, but the combination there is a little bit weird. I don't love drafting him as high as we have to. I would love a discount, but unfortunately, because we know the upside that he has in that Dallas offense, we are not getting a discount to draft him. It is what it is. But again, safe quarterback, right? After that, you get to A.J. Brown. Again, the first non-Dallas player in this next little tier of players that does not have a quarterback issue. And then I have talked about this offseason how much I love Chris Olave, but he does have the inherent risk of Jordan Tyson being there. And Rashee Rice comes next. He was actually much higher in my rankings before the surgery and jail stint. Let's actually pause here and talk a little bit more in depth about Rashee Rice because I want to dispel a few myths here. If I didn't have concerns that that man is quite literally a constant risk to go to jail, I would happily take him as the 5th wide receiver off the board. Yes, I am that confident in his talent and ability to put up top 5 numbers. We only saw Rashee Rice in 8 games in 2025, obviously because of the suspension and then injury towards the end. And he was a top 10 receiver in 5 of those games, and he averaged nearly 10 targets per game and had 6 touchdowns over that time period. The 3 games where he was not a top 10 receiver were against Denver, Houston, and the LA Chargers. I mean, that's very understandable there. And if you have any fears that injuries with the injury factor of Patrick Mahomes would hurt him, because of where Rice plays on the field, majority out of the slot with a significantly lower ADOT than everyone else on the team, just 4.9 average depth of target, any lingering injury concerns for Mahomes would probably least likely affect Rashee Rice. I don't believe that Xavier Worthy is a wide receiver 1 or can garner the level of targets that Rice can. Travis Kelce is a declining asset. The pass game will run through Rashee Rice if he is on the field. That is not a question. If you have any lingering thoughts that the first look is Travis Kelce, just bump the numbers up of them together last season. The first look was Rashee Rice. Now, of course, we do have to see how he is recovering from the surgery, but it was a cleanup to address issues from the 2024 injury, nothing to do with any new significant injury. So it's not really the same as the type of worry that we have with Malik Neighbors' injury recovery. We're less concerned about that, more concerned about the fact that, oh my God, his risk of jail time is really a major issue. The man is on probation and in a situation where literally just one more infraction can have immediate consequences. Often when players get in trouble for off the field issues, you don't see immediate consequences. Hence why, again, I mentioned I'm not dropping Josh Jacobs significantly in rankings because more than likely there would, if something were to happen from that, if anything were to come of it, it probably wouldn't affect him in terms of a suspension this season, right? But with Rashee Rice, it's different because he is on probation for, a fact, right? So while I have the utmost confidence that Rice will put up wide receiver one numbers when he is on the field, I don't have a lot of confidence that he won't do something in season to immediately remove himself from fantasy lineups. That's a very real and present risk, right? So drafting him is just flat out major risk tolerance. Now, we don't have to do it as high as we do with other players, so there's a bit of a discount there that makes it a little easier, but still, he is one of the riskiest picks with massive upside in fantasy drafts. After Rice, we get to Malik Neighbors, who has dropped significantly in rankings because he is at risk of missing the beginning of the season. Then you get into a little pocket of players who can theoretically put up wide receiver one numbers if things go right for them. And then after that, we get to wide receiver 18, Emeka Egbuka. Let's dive into that more because I am so ready for Emeka Egbuka wide receiver one season. Looking back at last season, the first 5 weeks of the season, he had 5 touchdowns with 2 games over 100 yards. That was over a very tough defensive stretch. Houston, the New York Jets before their trades, obviously, Philadelphia and Seattle. And it's very important to also note that those two 100-yard games were with Mike Evans injured. So we literally saw him thriving in tandem with a healthy Mike Evans, and then we saw him take over as the true wide receiver one with massive upside. Everything went sideways, unfortunately, after that, but that was not Emeka Egbuka, and I don't think it's anything that we need to panic over. It wasn't failure on his part. The entire offense failed, unfortunately. Baker Mayfield was struggling. None of the wide receivers were succeeding, so it's not as if someone came in and took a spot, right? And this was more than likely a coaching issue, and Baker Mayfield admittedly playing through injuries. His teammates have spoken about it as well. A healthy Baker Mayfield plus a new offensive coordinator should get the Bucs back on track to what we normally saw out of them, right, in terms of their pass game. And Emeka Egbuka will be the wide receiver one. I did talk about Ted Hurst and Jalen McMillan in the previous video as excellent sleeper options. But my clear preference here is Emeka Egbuka, and his ADP is very reasonable. I will be investing a ton in him here this year. Also, the wide receiver 3 and 4 range is not shown here in my rankings. It's just top 24, but I do think there's a nice little place in wide receiver 3 and 4 to make flex and depth investments here. That's where you're going to find your rookie receivers and then guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., Quentin Johnson, Brian Thomas Jr., and several others that are all very worth picks at that discounted price. If you would like to save some draft capital and draft guys a little bit later that can put up those same low-end wide receiver 2 numbers for sure. Now, tight end, this one is fun because it's a strategy thing. For me, my concept this year is the big 7, right? My top 7 are the ones that I want. The most critical thing to know about my tight end rankings with those top 7 is there are 2 tiers for me that I am comfortable with drafting in. And then I'm waiting until tight end 2 to draft more of those higher end tight end 2 or maybe in some lower ones and do more streaming options as well. Tier 1 is very clear for me. I narrow it down to a very specific tier of Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. Those are the only guys that have proven to be the first look in their offense through multiple seasons. They are defaults, right? Even if we have, questionable offensive situations, they're high volume guys, right? Then there's tier 2, that is Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, Tucker Kraft, Harold Fannin Jr., and Kyle Pitts. Technically speaking, Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren could really be more 1A tier guys, closer to Bowers and McBride, because they are closer to the same archetype of Bowers and McBride. But for me, these are the guys that I feel comfortable in general. Just feeling like at minimum, they are the second look in their offense, and many of them can be the first look in their offense. Kyle Pitts is technically the only one who, apples to apples, full healthy season from all players, probably cannot out-target Drake London, but he does have the added benefit that his offense is now run by Kevin Stefanski, who I can't stand. You guys know that, but he is very tight end friendly, right? Two things we know about him. He's no problem for running backs, and he is no problem for tight ends. He has proven over the years, year after year after year, that he will give 30% of the targets to tight ends, no matter who is the tight end, right? It doesn't have to be a prolific guy. That's just the offense that he likes to run. So Kyle Pitts will definitely benefit here. Yes, so it's going to be wonderful for him. These are guys who we are willing to pay for at their price, right? After that top 7, it's just about finding the best value. And what that means is that I don't hate Sam Laporta, right? But I would not take Sam Laporta right after Kyle Pitts for the same value, right? There would need to be a significant gap in ADP for me to make that investment. So after Kyle Pitts, I'm just skipping ahead to the tight end 2s and ADP. Now notice I said ADP because, not my rankings, because I do have Isaiah Likely ranked as tight end 11 for me. He's a tight end 1 for me, but in consensus, his ranking is tight end 14. So we're looking at where he goes. I like Likely as a target. Chig Okonkwo is another one. Those are 2 of my favorite later picks for tight ends. And I save quarterback for last because there's no major callouts. This is a very standard situation in terms of my rankings compared to consensus. You guys know the one thing that I do in a call out is one of my early fades was Jaxson Dart. Consensus is creeping closer to me. This keeps happening. I take a little aggressive stance and then consensus starts to creep up. I'm not saying I'm a trendsetter, but I might be a trendsetter. I don't know. But again, no shocker here. This was bound to come around. Everyone was bound to start pushing it down a little bit here because everyone's just coming to terms with the fact that this offense is not a lock to leap forward under Matt Nagy. And then the injury situation with Malik Neighbors is a major risk as well because it's not like Joe Burrow's situation where if Jamar Chase goes down, big whoop. I mean, obviously that's a big issue, but you still got T. Higgins, right? And they've got good depth. That is not the same thing. If Malik Neighbors starts the season on the pup, we are likely seeing games with below 200 passing yards for Jaxson Dart where he is relying on his legs because they don't have that level of depth in pass catchers. And I do like some of these guys, right? For sure. I talked about Isaiah Likely. I love Darnell Mooney, right? We've had good times. But at the end of the day, I need an actual wide receiver 1 to be sitting here drafting a quarterback as a top 10 option, right? And unfortunately, if Neighbors is still dealing with this injury, that doesn't exist. Dart is going to have to rely on his legs. That increases injury risk and volatility. We need a steeper discount on him. I'm not negative fade at all costs. I just need a discount here, right? I've got him on a dynasty team. I will be starting him on some weeks if I have to, right? But again, in redraft, we got to get a discount here. We don't want to be spending higher draft capital on him. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can find me across all social media platforms at It's Tara Time. I am also live every Wednesday on YouTube at 8 p.m. EST, so make sure that you stop by and chat. It is always a good time. You can ask me any questions that you want. You can also subscribe to my Substack if you want to support me another way. And if you are looking for new fantasy football tools in 2026, look at Player Profiler. You can use my promo code TARA for 25% off at Player Profiler.